Pennzoil, Quaker State, and Shell Rotella. 3 different bottles, 3 different labels, 3 different prices, but all 3 are owned by Shell. So, the question a lot of guys are asking is, what's the difference between them? Most people look at the label, shrug, and grab whatever is cheapest. And honestly, that is not the worst instinct, but it is not the full picture either. Because underneath those labels, there are real differences in base oil chemistry, additive packages, and manufacturing origin that almost nobody talks about online. The deeper you dig into this, the more interesting it gets. And some of what you find will genuinely surprise you. So let us start with the part into this story that almost nobody knows. Before Pennzoil became a motor oil brand, it was an oil exploration company, and one of the people who helped build it was a future president of the United States. In 1953, a young George Herbert Walker Bush co-founded Zapata Petroleum Corporation in Midland, Texas. A decade later, Zapata merged with South Penn Oil Company, which had been producing Pennsylvania-grade crude oil since 1889 as part of John D. Rockefeller's original Standard Oil empire. That merger created the modern Pennzoil Company, headquartered not in Pennsylvania, but in Houston. The future 41st president helped build the company behind the motor oil sitting on your shelf today. Hold on. A president helped build an oil company that makes $5 jugs of 5W30? That is a real thing? It is absolutely the real deal. But the story gets deeper. In 1984, Pennzoil struck a handshake deal to buy a controlling interest in Getty Oil. Texaco swooped in and snatched Getty away. Pennzoil sued for tortious interference, and a Houston jury awarded them $10,530 million. That was the largest civil judgment in American history at the time. Texaco, one of the biggest companies on earth, was forced into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The case eventually settled for $3 billion in cash, wired in 4 tranches on a single day in April of 1988. Pennzoil's lead attorney, Joe Jamail, pocketed $335 million in legal fees. That is still one of the largest attorney payouts ever recorded. That $3 billion windfall reshaped Pennzoil's future, but the company still needed a partner. So, what happened next? Pennzoil and Quaker State had been fierce competitors for decades. Quaker State was founded in 1912 by a man named T.G. Finney out of Oil City, Pennsylvania. The name was a nod to William Penn's Quaker heritage. By 1931, 19 small regional oil companies merged to form Quaker State Corporation. For most of the 20th century, Pennzoil and Quaker State were the #1 and #2 selling motor oils in America. They were headquartered just miles apart in the Pennsylvania oil region. By the late 1990s, both were struggling. In 1998, Pennzoil spun off its lubricants division, which simultaneously acquired Quaker State for roughly $1 billion, forming Pennzoil Quaker State Company. 4 years later, in 2002, Royal Dutch Shell bought the combined company for $1.8 billion in cash, plus $1.1 billion in assumed debt, nearly $2.9 billion total. The Federal Trade Commission approved the deal, and Shell became the largest lubricants company on the planet overnight. That is how 3 competing American motor oil brands ended up under one European corporate roof. So, they are all Shell now. But that still does not answer the big question. Is the oil inside the bottles actually different? Things get fascinating here, because the answer is definitively yes, and the proof comes from a place most people have never heard of. Shell's crown jewel technology is something called Pure Plus, which is a gas-to-liquid process. Instead of refining crude oil from the ground, Shell takes natural gas, which is mostly methane, and converts it into a crystal-clear synthetic base oil through a 3-stage chemical process. First, the natural gas is partially oxidized into synthesis gas, which is a mixture of hydrogen and carbon monoxide. Then it undergoes Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, where catalysts convert that gas into long-chain waxy hydrocarbons. Finally, those waxes are hydrocracked and isomerized into precisely engineered base oil molecules. Shell spent over 40 years and filed more than 3,500 patents developing this process. 40 years and 3,500 patents. That is not marketing. Where does this actually happen? Every single drop of Pure Plus base oil on Earth comes from one facility. It is called the Pearl Gas to Liquid Plant, and it sits in Ras Laffan, Qatar. It is a joint venture between Shell and Qatar Energy, and it costs between $18 and $24 billion to build. It is the largest gas-to-liquids plant in the world. It processes 1.6 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day and produces approximately 1 million tons of base oil annually. Shell actually planned to build a second facility in Louisiana, but canceled the project in 2013 when costs ballooned from $12.5 billion to $20 billion. So, that single plant in the Qatari desert is the only source of this base oil for the entire world. That is a massive investment for one ingredient in motor oil. So, which bottles actually contain it? Listen closely. Not all Shell brands get the gas-to-liquid base oil. Pennzoil Platinum and Pennzoil Ultra Platinum are the guaranteed recipients. Every bottle that carries the tagline, "Made from natural gas," contains 100% Pure Plus base oil. This has been the case since February of 2014. The resulting base oil is classified as American Petroleum Institute Group 3, though the industry informally calls it Group 3 Plus because its properties are exceptional. It has a viscosity index above 130, near zero sulfur content, virtually no aromatic compounds, and purity levels around 99.5%. Those numbers approach or even match Group 4 polyalpha olefin synthetics in several key performance metrics. Quaker State. Full synthetic, on the other hand, primarily uses conventional Group 3 hydrocracked base oil derived from crude petroleum. Shell has confirmed this directly when asked by enthusiasts. Safety data sheets for some Quaker State products list the gas-to-liquid chemical identification number as a possible component and state that one or more base oils may be present. Oil analysts interpret this to mean gas-to-liquid base stock can show up in some Quaker State batches when supply is plentiful, but it is never guaranteed the way it is with Pennzoil Platinum. Shell Rotella T6, which is the full synthetic diesel oil that many truck drivers and motorcycle riders prefer, uses Shell's extra high viscosity index base oil derived from processing slack wax. That is another Group 3 variant, and Shell's own product data sheets mention Pure Plus technology base oils as a component in some Rotella formulations. So, the base oils are different, but base oil is only part of the equation. What about the additives? This is the part that gets discussed the least, and it might matter the most. Even if two oils use the exact same base oil, the additive packages would still make them fundamentally different products. And Shell's internal strategy here is surprisingly unreal. According to a well-known insider on the Bob is the Oil Guy forum, believed to be a former employee of Shell Oil Products United States, Pennzoil uses additive packages from Infinium. Infinium is a 50-50 joint venture between Shell and ExxonMobil that manufactures fuel and lubricant additives. Quaker State, by contrast, uses additive packages from Lubrizol or Afton Chemical, which are completely separate companies. The insider explained that Shell intentionally pits its own brands against each other when negotiating with additive suppliers, so the company gets the best possible deals on additive systems overall. Pennzoil and Quaker State are, in a sense, competing against each other inside Shell's own supply chain. Wait, so the same parent company is deliberately using different additive suppliers for its own competing brands? That is a business strategy, not just a formulation choice. Exactly. And the differences show up clearly in laboratory testing. The Petroleum Quality Institute of America has published virgin oil analysis data for both brands. When you compare their 5W30 full synthetics side by side, the chemistry is noticeably different. Pennzoil Platinum uses a balanced calcium and magnesium detergent system, with roughly 1,006 parts per million of calcium and 674 parts per million of magnesium. This low calcium, high magnesium approach is specifically designed for modern turbocharged gasoline direct injection engines. It helps combat a phenomenon called low-speed pre-ignition, which is a potentially engine-destroying condition in turbo engines, where fuel ignites before the spark plug fires. Pennzoil also carries 263 parts per million of boron, which functions as both an anti-wear additive and a dispersant, plus 80 parts per million of molybdenum, which is a friction modifier. Quaker State Ultimate Durability, tested under the older American Petroleum Institute SN specification, used a very different approach. It had a high calcium, low magnesium system with 2,268 parts per million of calcium and only 8 parts per million of magnesium. It carried almost no boron at just 4 parts per million, but significantly higher molybdenum at 252 parts per million, and higher zinc and phosphorus levels overall. The newer Quaker State formulations under the current American Petroleum Institute SP specification have likely rebalanced to meet modern requirements, but the fundamental additive architecture remains distinct between the two brands. The consensus among oil analysts is that Quaker State receives a lower overall additive treat rate than comparable Pennzoil products. That means less total additive volume per unit of oil, which reduces production cost. However, every Quaker State product still meets all required industry specifications. Here is something that will twist your brain. Does the more expensive oil always win in testing? No. And this is the part that makes the whole conversation interesting. In independent film strength testing using a protocol called 540 RAT, Quaker State Ultimate Durability 5WW30 scored 113,377 pounds per square inch, which was rated as incredible. Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 5W30 scored 99,039 pounds per square inch, rated as outstanding. A more recent test of Quaker State Full Synthetic hit 133,302 pounds per square inch. The cheaper oil outperformed the premium one in boundary lubrication, which is the condition where metal surfaces are closest to touching. This is likely because Quaker State's higher molybdenum and zinc concentrations provide superior anti-wear film strength at the contact point. So, the budget brand can actually outperform the premium brand in certain lab tests. What does the most definitive scientific comparison show? A man named Lake Speed Jr., a certified lubrication specialist and the son of a NASCAR driver, performed Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy on both Pennzoil 5W30 and Quaker State 5W30 full synthetic oils. This lab technique identifies molecular composition by measuring how a sample absorbs infrared light. His findings were unambiguous. Pennzoil showed a narrow spectroscopy spike characteristic of gas to liquid base oil. Quaker State showed a broader signature consistent with conventional hydrocracked Group 3 base oil. Different additive packages were confirmed as well. Quaker State had higher calcium detergent levels because the non-gas to liquid base requires more additives to meet the same specification. Speed's conclusion was elegant. He said there are many roads to the same destination. So, the molecules are literally different. The chemistry is different, the additive suppliers are different. But what about real-world engine wear? Does any of this actually matter once the oil is circulating inside your engine? Blackstone Laboratories has analyzed hundreds of thousands of used oil samples over the past 30 years. They are the gold standard for used oil analysis in the enthusiast community. Their official position is blunt. They see no statistically significant difference in wear numbers for any oil they have tested. Their data suggests that the grade of oil, meaning the viscosity, and the change interval matter exponentially more than brand selection. As they put it, as long as the oil weight and certifications match what your car needs, there is no point in paying extra for a brand name. A separate study covered by The Drive analyzed over 10,000 oil samples and reached the same conclusion, echoing what Consumer Reports had found a decade earlier. Brand loyalty, from a pure engine wear perspective, appears to be more emotional than mechanical. If the wear numbers are basically the same, then what are you actually paying for when you choose Pennzoil over Quaker State? A few things. First, you are paying for the guaranteed gas to liquid base oil. Pennzoil Platinum always uses it. Quaker State might use it sometimes, but never promises it. Second, you are paying for a higher additive treat rate and more boron in the formulation. Third, you are paying for Shell's massive Pennzoil marketing machine. Pennzoil sponsors Team Penske and NASCAR with Joey Logano's iconic number 22 car. It is the official motor oil of IndyCar and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It partners with Ferrari in Formula One. Those sponsorship deals cost tens of millions of dollars annually, and that cost gets baked into the price of the product. Quaker State, meanwhile, is positioned as the professional installer's brand. It holds a factory fill partnership with Hyundai Motor America, meaning Quaker State oil ships inside brand new Hyundai engines rolling off the assembly line. That is less glamorous than a Ferrari partnership, but arguably more meaningful as a technical endorsement. What does the price difference actually look like at the store? At Walmart today, Pennzoil Platinum Full Synthetic 5 W30 runs about $26 for a 5-quart jug. Quaker State Full Synthetic in the same viscosity costs roughly $21 to $24. That is a $3 to $5 difference for oils carrying the same American Petroleum Institute SP, International Lubricants Standardization and Approval Committee GF6A, and Dexos 1 Generation 3 certifications. Pennzoil Ultra Platinum sits around $26.50. For context, Mobil 1 runs about $28, and Valvoline Restore and Protect is close to $30. Both Shell brands are cheaper than the primary competitors. The warranty programs tell the story too. Pennzoil Ultra Platinum offers a 20-year, 750,000-mile warranty. Pennzoil Platinum offers 15 years and 500,000 miles. Quaker State offers 10 years and 300,000 miles, but with an interesting twist. If you actually hit 300,000 miles running Quaker State, they will pay you up to $3,000. There is also an interesting viscosity nuance worth mentioning. Testing showed Pennzoil Platinum 5W30 runs on the thin side of the acceptable range at 9.9 centistokes at 100 degrees Celsius. Quaker State runs on the thick side at 10.19 centistokes. One forum analysis measured the gap even wider, calling them practically the thinnest and thickest you can get, while still qualifying as a 5W30. Both are within specification, but it means the oils behave slightly differently inside your engine despite wearing the same viscosity label. What about that old reputation Quaker State has for sludging up engines? Is there any truth to that? That is a myth from the 1980s and the 1990s. Back then, Quaker State used Pennsylvania-grade waxy crude that was genuinely prone to sludge formation under certain conditions. That reputation was earned. But modern Quaker State Full Synthetic is a completely different product. It has been reformulated, re-baselined, and carries the same current generation certifications as every other major brand on the shelf. Holding on to that sludge reputation in 2026 is like refusing to buy a Toyota because of a recall that happened 40 years ago. The product has changed entirely. Is there anything new happening with these brands that people should know about? Yes, and this is something almost nobody is talking about yet. In early 2025, Shell and a company called Blue Tide completed a world-scale re-refining facility in Baytown, Texas. It can process 5,000 barrels per day of used motor oil and convert it into high-quality Group 2 plus base oils. This signals Shell's significant push toward a circular economy for lubricants. If you buy Pennzoil or Quaker State conventional oil in the coming years, some portion of the base oil may be re-refined used motor oil with a lower carbon footprint. Shell's leadership called it a significant milestone. Product lines have shifted recently too. Quaker State Ultimate Durability was quietly rebranded to Quaker State Full Synthetic. A new tier called Quaker State Ultimate Protection now sits at the top of the lineup, potentially with gas-to-liquid base oil, positioned to compete more directly with Pennzoil Platinum. Meanwhile, Pennzoil Full Synthetic, which comes in a black label, was introduced as a new mid-tier option between conventional Pennzoil and Pennzoil Platinum. The exact formulation has not been publicly confirmed. So, after all of this, what is the simplest way to think about it? There are really two buckets here. Bucket 1 is base oil quality. If you want the guaranteed gas-to-liquid base oil with near-zero impurities and superior oxidation stability, Pennzoil Platinum or Pennzoil Ultra Platinum is the only sure bet in the Shell family. If you are comfortable with conventional hydrocracked Group 3 synthetic, which is still an excellent base oil by any reasonable standard, Quaker State Full Synthetic gives you that at a lower price. Bucket 2 is additive strategy. Pennzoil prioritizes boron and a balanced calcium-magnesium detergent system optimized for modern turbo engines. Quaker State leans harder on molybdenum and zinc, which gives it surprisingly strong film strength in boundary lubrication scenarios. Neither approach is wrong. They are just different paths to the same destination, as Lakespeed Jr. put it. If you drive a late-model turbocharged direct injection engine, and you want the most modern formulation approach, Pennzoil Platinum makes the most technical sense. If you drive anything else and you want to save a few dollars every oil change without compromising protection, Quaker State Full Synthetic is arguably the best value in the motor oil market. It meets every specification your owner's manual requires, costs less, and independent testing shows no meaningful wear disadvantage. What about Shell Rotella for people who run diesel trucks or motorcycles? Shell Rotella T6 occupies its own niche entirely. It carries robust CK4 diesel certifications and higher zinc and phosphorus levels that make it popular with diesel truck owners, motorcycle riders, and owners of older engines that use flat tappet camshafts. Those older valve train designs need higher anti-wear additive levels than modern gasoline-focused oils provide. Rotella T6 fills that gap perfectly. What are the 3 things people should walk away remembering? First, Pennzoil, Quaker State, and Shell branded oils are demonstrably not the same product. They use different base oils, different additive suppliers, and different treat rates. Anyone who tells you they are identical is either uninformed or oversimplifying. Second, the practical impact of those differences on engine wear appears to be minimal for the average driver who changes oil on a reasonable schedule. Blackstone Laboratories, with hundreds of thousands of samples in their database, finds no statistically significant wear difference between major brands. Viscosity, grade, and change interval matter far more than the name on the bottle. Third, Quaker State Full Synthetic may be the best-kept secret in the oil aisle. It meets every modern specification, occasionally outperforms Pennzoil in independent film strength testing, and costs $3 to $5 less per jug. The extra money you spend on Pennzoil buys you a cleaner base oil, more boron, a longer warranty, and the satisfaction of knowing your oil comes from a $19 billion plant in Qatar. Whether that is worth $5 to you every 5,000 miles is a personal call, not a technical one. Pay attention to what happens with Shell's new re-refining facility in Baytown, Texas. If re-refined base oil starts showing up in Pennzoil or Quaker State conventional products, that changes the value equation for those lower-tier products significantly. It does not mean the oil will be worse. Re-refined Group 2 plus base oil can be excellent, but it is worth knowing what you are buying, especially if you are paying a premium for what you assume is virgin base stock. The real experts, the Blackstone analysts, the certified lubrication specialists, and the tribologists who study friction for a living all converge on the same conclusion. Buy whatever meets your vehicle's specifications, is freshly dated, and fits your budget. If Pennzoil Platinum is on sale with a $20 rebate, grab it. If Quaker State is $3 cheaper next month, grab that instead. Your engine genuinely will not know the difference.